Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through my latest sketch, which is of the Humber River Bridge. So I'm on location and I've got my pencil and my pens with me and sketching out the major composition elements in pencil, and then I go over top and pull out the details and the structure of the drawing with my Micron pen. So this portion of the drawing that I did on location took between 25 and 30 minutes. And then I go back home where I have a nice big desk and all of my supplies to work through the watercolor washes. Ultimately, I'd like to do everything on location and just very quickly and efficiently get down on paper the atmosphere and the feel of a place. I'm not quite there, and I'm still learning a lot of watercolor techniques, which is why I find it helpful to be at home for this portion. It also makes filming easier, and since I'm making these videos, that's a big plus. So the biggest thing that I've been learning as I'm working through this course with Domestika is the technique of adding just with a wet brush, no pigment, wetting the page to prep it for the watercolor, the pigment, and it allows the color to sort of spread across the page a bit more fluidly and a bit more unexpectedly. And so I like that, and I'm using that for these base layers where I have a wash for the sky, a darker blue for the water, and then this beige that I use to block out the land. So it's still very early spring. There's no trees with greenery, so it's a lot of trees with no leaves. And then I'll block out the buildings with a deeper tone of blue. And then layering in a warmer, deeper brown for the heart of the forest, I guess. I've left the underlayment still wet, so hoping that this brown mixes together and creates a nice gradient at places, not a harsh pocket of new color. And as I'm working through this drawing, I'm always thinking about that termination point at the end of the bridge near the seam of the notebook. That's sort of what I established way back when I was on location sketching as the piece that I wanted to be the focal point of the drawing. So it's where I want to concentrate the most detail and the deepest shadows and the highlights, so we get the most contrast happening in that spot of the drawing. And then have everything else sort of fade away, kind of in an atmospheric perspective, which I think was fairly successful to the right. You can see the detail really peters out, and the colors and the vibrancy of everything kind of just fades away into the page. I was a little less successful to the left, and I think that sky maybe I could have held back a little bit. But overall, I think this is good progress. I'm starting to sketch a little bit closer to how I want my sketches to look, so I'm encouraged. Still lots to learn. So just building up the detail now. We have sort of the main shadow of the bridge cast on the water, the darker shadows below and behind the bridge, and now layering in the shadows on the bridge structure. And this is a very popular spot in the summertime. Even in the winter, this bridge is very well used. It's a very successful piece of public infrastructure. It was designed by Montgomery Sizem here in Toronto. I really like this bridge. You can see up in the upper right of this, my watercolor set. It's actually a set my grandmother gave me, 20 years ago. And I've always sort of sketched, but never, I didn't know about urban sketching until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, which is when I started really walking around with my sketchbook and drawing. And I started very much with just pencil line, and then getting into working with pens and fountain pens, but never adding value to the drawings, like light and shadow. I've always kind of been intimidated by it and don't know how to see it. Like I did a lot of line contour drawings, and I really like that because you're just focused on your subject. I used to draw lots of plants, and all the lines are curvy, and you can really just get lost paying attention to the detail of it. And it doesn't really matter what your drawing looks like, but just by the act of, observing the line quality was always really interesting. So that's how I got into observational sketching. And there's something about that really does change how you see. And I haven't got there yet with tone. I find even watching this back, and when I'm painting, I have my tripod set up to film this. And even looking at the screen, I can actually see the value differently. I don't notice it when I'm just looking at the sketchbook in the same way that I can notice the relationships between shapes, which is, I guess, how I've learned to draw. And now adding details, some really poppy colors on the people walking on the bridge. I could have done a better job of the people in the foreground. I should have put a bit more care into how they actually looked. But I really wanted to draw the eye to that faraway point at the end of the bridge. So adding in an even deeper shadow here now, beneath the bridge. A little bit of detail to that building. Not the best building I've ever drawn, for sure. But overall, I do like the way the character of the drawing is coming. I made an error. I made lots of errors, but the one that bothers me is the shadow of the bridge. I ended up touching it with my finger when the paint was wet, and so you can see that fingerprint very clearly interrupting the shadow. So here I'm getting near the end of the drawing process. I've let the paint dry, and I'm going back over with a whiteout marker and just trying to pull back or bring back some of the highlights that got a bit lost in the watercoloring process. So I do this, and then I do flick a little bit of paint on the drawing. I hope you've enjoyed this process video, and please subscribe if you've made it this far. I really appreciate it. Thank you.